Well, welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 44th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 336th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, September 14th, 2017. I am your host, Jared Morris, and I am very excited to announce that we have redesigned our website, and now anytime you want to view our live broadcasts and participate in the live chat, you can simply visit our homepage, assemblycall.com. You can do it obviously from our YouTube channel as well, but you can do it right from our homepage. You will find the current live broadcast and live chat right there at the top of the page. All righty, well, let's begin this week how we begin every episode of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And, you know, sometimes these banner moments just write themselves. That was my thought after reading an interview at Inside the Hall earlier this week with Jake Forrester's father. Jake, of course, is the latest commitment for the class of 2018 for Indiana. And what was immediately evident in the afterglow of his commitment was just how enthusiastic Jake and his family are about the IU basketball program under the direction of Archie Miller. Consider this quote from Jake's father, Dwight. Quote, "If you look at Indiana basketball's history, it's time for them to go back to the way they used to be. It's time for them to be a power. It's time for them. We're not talking about just making it to the NCAA tournament. The talk from Archie and the talk from Bruiser is we want to win it. We don't want to just go to the tournament. It's time for us to be Final Four contenders. It's time for us to get back to those days of Indiana basketball. I think with that staff and what they have and what's coming, I think that's a possibility," unquote. And those are obviously exciting words for any IU fan to hear. And these are not just empty words from a casual observer. These are the words of a father with a skeptical eye who wants his son to play in the best basketball situation possible. Well, not 48 hours after the family's official visit to Bloomington last weekend, with 2 official visits still scheduled, Jake announced his commitment to Indiana. Now, some people may be a little bit concerned that Jake is quote-unquote only rated a 3-star prospect by some services, or that scholarships for the class of 2019 seem to be filling up. Thoughts that I have frankly had myself, but that I've come to realize are short-sighted. Regardless, one thing is crystal clear. Archie Miller is targeting recruits that he wants, guys that fit his system, and he is selling them and their families on a bold, optimistic vision for Indiana's basketball future. And talented in-demand recruit after talented in-demand recruit is buying what he's selling. Archie seems determined to hang banner number 6 in Simon Scott Assembly Hall, and it all starts with consistent success on the recruiting trail. So far, so good. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show, which includes a special guest. But first, to my left, someone who is definitely not a special guest, because he is a special co-host, an original member of the Assembly Call team, and the man that we turn to when we need detailed scouting reports of under-the-radar recruits who may or may not take credit for discovering them, depending on how good they turn out to be. He's a columnist for The Big Lead. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what Indiana basketball-related topic do you feel like ranting about this week?
I think it's the commitment of Forrester. I really do, and it's not just that he chose Indiana. It's the kind of players that Archie Miller has put together in this recruiting class. And if you look at it, if you include Race Thompson, which I know he's technically not part of this coming class because he's already on campus, but you're looking at guys who have size and length, and you win in the Big Ten with size. I mean, if you look at the past champions of the Big Ten, the teams that compete, Wisconsin, when they went to the national title game, you think of Frank Kaminsky, you think of Nigel Hayes, you think of that interior presence they had. When you think of, you know, any Tom Izzo coach team, you think of rebounding. That's the first thing you think of. You think of toughness. You think of defense inside and how hard it's going to be to out-tough them in the paint. Last year, the 2 guys everybody mentioned whenever they said they were going to talk about Purdue, the first 2 guys they always mentioned was, how are you going to deal with Swanigan and Haas? Inside presence is how you win in the Big Ten, and these guys all have size, length, and can play in the paint, or can at least mix it up in the paint. And I think that Forrester just adds to that, and you're starting to see what kind of players Archie Miller's going to try and attract, and how he's going to build his team to compete in the Big Ten.
Yep. And to my right, we have our special guest host this week. He is the founder and editor of Inside the Hall, as well as my co-host on Podcast on the Brink. He is Alex Bozich. Alex, it is great to have you with us on the Assembly Call. What stood out to you most from the past week in IU basketball?
Yeah, just kind of adding on to first off, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Just
Good to have
adding
you.
on to what Ryan said, I think the main thing that stands out to me about Forrester is, I know we're going to get into some of the discussion of, whether the scholarship stuff and, how the numbers are going to work out. But to me, he seems like a perfect fit for what Archie Miller is going to want to do with IU basketball. And that means recruiting guys who can play multiple positions, guard multiple positions. Specifically, when you look at Forrester, and I did a little research, watched, usually I cut up video of guys look at their offensive game, but looking at him as a shot blocker and what he's going to be able to bring from that perspective. I think overall, when you look at each of the guys that Archie's brought in to the program so far in this first class, all of them have a chance to be foundation pieces, guys that are going to be in the program for 3 or 4 years, guys who are going to, you're going to maybe not say, 2 or 3 years, this guy's a lottery pick, but you're going to say this guy contributed to winning a lot of Big Ten games. So I think Forrester just kind of, adds on to what was already shaping up to be a really good class. And I think fans should be excited about the future and kind of what Archie's already assembled here with 2018. And really at this point with what he's got committed with the 4 guys, and obviously Race Thompson, could expect them to continue to recruit for 2018 because, I know this upcoming season people are excited for, but I think the following season, the coaching staff wants the team and the program to be even better than this next coming season. So I think that's you're going to see a transition this season, and then the following season you're going to see another transition. But they want that team to be even better.
Hey, kudos to you for wearing a White Sox shirt too, because the future is bright on the South Side as well. Love it.
Yeah.
I thought this was Indiana basketball related topics only.
That's Midwest. That White Sox talk is relevant because 90% of the people listening are Cubs fans. So
exactly, that's why I wore it.
All righty. Well, here's what we are going to discuss this week. Was it the right decision for Archie Miller to offer a scholarship to Jake Forrester? We're going to talk about that. What kind of player is Jake and how he fit into Archie's style of play? We will have a detailed scouting report. Then we will discuss some other important recruiting notes from the classes of 2018 and 2019, and we will provide our thoughts on the rather pessimistic expectations that many of the preseason magazines have for the 2017-18 Hoosiers. And finally, with whatever time we have left, we will answer your questions. All of that coming here on Assembly Call Radio. Real quick, a word about this week's sponsor for Assembly Call Radio, SeatGeek. Remember that when you need tickets to a sporting event, to a concert, or most other live events, SeatGeek is the best place to go to ensure that you get the best deal. Their app and their website are easy to use, and the color-coded deal rater makes it easy to see when tickets are delivering the best value at any given time. And here are 2 URLs to keep handy that will make buying IU basketball and IU football tickets easy: iubbtickets.shop and iufbtickets.shop. The first one, iubbtickets.shop, will take you directly to the IU basketball listing on SeatGeek. iufbtickets.shop will take you directly to the IU football listing on SeatGeek. You can use these URLs to find the best prices on IU basketball and football tickets, and since those are our affiliate URLs, we actually get a commission whenever you use them and end up purchasing tickets. So in other words, you get a great deal on IU tickets, another passionate IU fan will be in the stands to cheer on our Hoosiers, and you help support the Assembly Call. A win-win-win all around. Again, those URLs are iubbtickets.shop and iufbtickets.shop. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, don't forget the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY. Use it when you make your first purchase, and you will get $20 back after that purchase. Again, the promo code is ASSEMBLY. All righty, you are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and our special guest host, Alex Bozich. And guys, before we get into breaking down Jake Forrester's game, let's discuss, the small little bit of consternation that some IU fans have with Archie Miller targeting another forward who, again, is quote-unquote only a 3-star, although, some services like ESPN have him rated as a 4-star prospect. People see all the forwards that we have on the roster projected for 2018 and have this perception that there might be a dwindling number of scholarships available for 2019, even though that's way out in the future. And that is obviously a class that has a number of five-star prospects that IU is in a good position with. And I think some fans worry that perhaps Archie should have been more patient. I actually did a quick hit episode on this a couple of weeks ago and said something to that effect, although my thinking on that has changed quite a bit in the interim, because I basically realized that I know very little about recruiting and about analyzing these prospects in comparison to Archie Miller, and I am more than willing to trust his and his staff's decisions when it comes to who they're going to target and how they're going to manage their scholarship situations. Alex, are you buying into that line of thinking, and I know you kind of addressed this already, but are you at all worried about, some of these things that other IU fans seem to be a little worried about?
Well, these conversations always take me back to a time when Indiana was recruiting Cody Zeller. And I'll never forget a conversation I had with him in Assembly Hall. He was, I think, going into it was the spring before his senior year. And Dustin DePirac at the time was the beat writer for the Bloomington Herald Times. And we were talking to Cody, and the question came up about scholarships. And Cody looked at us all, and when we asked him about whether or not he was worried about the scholarship situation, he said, "I have a scholarship if I want one." And I've always kind of followed that line of thinking ever since when it comes to looking at five-star prospects, because obviously I maintain a scholarship chart as a reference point for people to look at on the website, and obviously people are interested in this discussion. But when you look at a guy like Romeo Langford, you look at a guy like Darius Garland, these are program-changing potential recruits. And if they want to come to Indiana, they're going to have a scholarship. How that happens, to me, is semantics, really, when you kind of look at the potential that both of those guys have. I would also remind people that 9 of the last 10 years, Indiana has had some sort of off-season attrition, whether that be a guy leaving to go pro or a guy leaving via transfer. I think there was something like 750 to 800 transfers this year in college basketball. I don't think that number is going to be going down anytime soon. And, that's one reason, when people say, "Oh, there's one scholarship left for next season," I would say kind of hit the pause button on that, because if there's guys that the coaching staff feel like can help the team win a lot of games next year, they're going to figure out how to bring them in.
It's like if Don Fisher wants to host an episode of the Assembly Call, there's a spot for Don Fisher on the Assembly Call. Someone, we will make that happen. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with Alex. I think that this is the kind of situation where these things do work themselves out, and people may not like how they work themselves out sometimes, but that's just the nature of the beast in college athletics when it all comes down to it. I think that, there's a new coach at Indiana, and I think that there's going to be some attrition, and some guys are not going to fit into what he does after a year, maybe, and maybe they go somewhere else, and guys who weren't recruited by him may not stick around for their own reasons. It may not be because of he asked them to leave, but these things do work themselves out. And as Alex said, the transfer market in college basketball is just insane right now, and guys seem to be leaving everywhere. And I don't know if there's something to do that will be done about that, but until there is, you can expect it to continue to happen. I think obviously if, Darius Garland and Romeo Langford want to come to Indiana, they're going to have a spot, and things will work themselves out as they always seem to do. Whatever it is, something will happen, something will work itself out.
Yep. So bottom line, let's cross that bridge if and when we come to it. But for now, let's celebrate the guys that we have, talk about the guys that we have. And we're going to do that next on the Assembly Call. It is scouting report time. We're going to dive deep into the game of Jake Forrester, IU's newest commit, and how he will fit at Indiana. That's coming up next. Stick with us. All right. Excellent. Hello
Alex,
to everybody watching live.
Alex, have you seen Forrester in person?
I may have, but he didn't really stand out if I did, because I wasn't really paying that close of attention to him back in April at the EYBL.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, no, I was just wondering if
I've watched several of his games like on replay.
Yeah, I think that he looks bigger than 6'8", and he's listed at 6'8". So
his dad was adamant that he was 6'10", so
yeah, he looks like that, and I don't know if that's just because he's. I was wondering if that was just because he's long, or if he's actually taller than that. And they may not have just. They may not have just.
Jared and I talked about this on the podcast. It's like whether or not he's 6'8" or 6'10" is not really relevant if his wingspan's 7 foot.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's.
I mean, you're not blocking shots with your head.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I was just curious because I was wondering if he had grown since the listing came up. It seemed like
potentially
he seems bigger and longer than that. Jerome Hunter looks like he could wind up being like 6'8", 6'9". I mean, the way he's built, he just looks like he's
really good. He blew me away in the spring game in the summer, so I like him a lot.
He could be a 5-star by the time he gets on campus. He is awesome. And I know people who have been watching him, and I know this is in between segment stuff, but I know people who have been watching him for a while and say that he is so much better than he was even 18 months ago.
We like the between segment stuff. This is the bonus for the folks watching live, which we have a great live audience tonight. By the way, I want to say happy birthday, Megan Mahaffey, who's there in the live chat. I see her. I know it's not your birthday today, but it's your birthday week. So I want to wish you a happy birthday. Great to see you all here live.
We know Megan is celebrating for a week.
No question about it. No question about it. Okay, so we have, for the second segment, we've got 10 minutes and 56 seconds. So we'll intro that. Which one of you gents would like to go first, talking about Mr. Forrester?
Alex can say what if he agrees with my assessment, because I've watched some, but not as much as I usually do. But I think I've got a pretty good handle on his game. I'll remind people too, Alex, that we talked about this on Podcast on the Brink, and give a little plug for POTB. Okay, so we'll start with you, Ryan, and then we'll just let the segment go where it'll go. And if we have more on him than one segment, we'll pick it up in segment 3, but I bet we'll be able to get it all in here. Okay.
10 minutes, 56 seconds is a good amount of time.
Yeah, I'll try and go quick.
And Alex, watch the chat, because I'll put, as we get closer on time, I'll put little notices in there. And if I start talking over you, it just means that I'm doing the outro.
The Hangout chat.
Yeah, the Hangout chat. All right, here we go. Let me get this started here. You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Alex Bozich from Inside the Hall, and it is scouting report time to break down the newest Indiana commit for the class of 2018, Jake Forrester. And of course, whenever we have a new player to break down and give you a scouting report on, we go to our man, Ryan Phillips, who has watched some tape on Jake Forrester and has an assessment of the young man's game. Ryan, what'd you see? What do you like? What do you dislike?
Well, first of all, he's 6'8", 200. He's listed at 6'8", 215. I think he looks taller than that. As Alex and I were talking in between segments, it doesn't really matter how tall he is if you've got a huge wingspan. I mean, but I would say he's probably pushing 6'10". He's from Westtown School in Norristown, Pennsylvania. So no, not an Indiana guy, folks. I'm sorry, but he is now in Indiana. He's now going to be an Indiana player. So what I like about him is he is, compared to some of the other sort of wing forward guys we've added, he is more of a guy who's going to stick around in the paint, and he's going to play down low, and he's going to, be more of a guy who plays. He might face up to the basket, but he's going to be more of a guy who plays in the paint and affects the game in the paint, and is not going to wander out to the 3-point line consistently. What I like about him is he's an aggressive finisher at the hoop, really loves to dunk the ball, but he also has some touch and uses the glass occasionally. And from what I've seen, which, look, I haven't seen a ton because there just isn't a lot out there on him that I've found. But he is a guy who finishes around the hoop. He is also an aggressive offensive rebounder, which is a big deal at this level. If you can get a guy who already has the instinct to go to the glass, that is a huge deal. So along with his length and athleticism, this is a guy who goes after the ball on the offensive end, offensive rebounds, and he does run the floor really well, looking for alley-oops, looking for, anything you can find him running the floor. And I'll say this, and I say this every time we talk about a big guy. If you are a kid out there and you're a big man, or if you're the parent of a big man, two things you need to do at all times will gain you 10 points a game extra. Run the floor and go after offensive boards. You do those two things, you will get 10 points more a game if you do them consistently. And those are two things that I really like that he does. His shot blocking ability, he can block shots, and he's got the length to block shots, play defense, but he's a bit of a swinger on his shot blocks. He winds up and tries to hammer the ball instead of just going up 50-50 in the air. That's something he's going to have to change. If you go swinging in the Big Ten, you're going to pick up a lot of fouls. And Thomas Bryant learned that early in his career, and he started going 50-50 more his later in his freshman year. As far as his shooting ability, I think he's got really nice touch, but I'm not sure he's ever going to be a 3-point shooter. I'm not a huge fan of his shooting motion. He kind of chicken wings his elbow out a little bit, which we know from Jared's sign off every time. Keep your elbows in, kids.
That's right. Eyes on the rim.
Eyes on the rim, keep your elbows in too. So yeah, he chicken wings out his elbow. Also, when he shoots, he leans his upper body back a little bit, which winds up giving him a flat shot. He'll make them, but that's only because he's got really nice touch. It's not a shooting motion that's conducive to becoming a really good outside shooter. So obviously that's something to work on. And of course, as with all these kids, he's got to add weight, got to get stronger, and be willing to take the pounding. But overall, I really like him. I think he moves really well for his size. He's a quick guy. He's got some athleticism, and I think he's the kind of guy who could get a lot better and could be a really good Big Ten player.
That was Alex. I want to get your thoughts too. You and I obviously spent a lot of time talking about Jake on the most recent episode of Podcast on the Brink. And for those of you who don't listen to both Assembly Call and Podcast on the Brink, Alex is my co-host over there. So definitely make sure.
Yeah, what are you doing with your lives, folks? If you're an Indiana fan, you got to listen to both, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Alex, what would you add to what Ryan had to say about Jake?
Well, I would say first that I think he's going to be an excellent addition to what Indiana wants to do defensively with the pack line defense, because he can switch everything and he can recover well because of his length and because of his athleticism and quickness. Offensively,
I do want to say, because I didn't mention this, not to cut you off, Alex, but he does have really quick feet. That I noticed that, and I'm sure that'll help him defensively, like what you're saying with the switching and recovering as well.
Right.
I was surprised at that because of his size.
Yeah, he offensively, that most of the baskets that he got in the EYBL were running the floor in transition, a lot of rim running, and as Ryan said, you can probably pick up 6 to 8, maybe 10 points a game if you're a big man, if you just beat your man to the other end of the floor. If you have teammates who are looking up and looking for you on the break, that's kind of the other consideration. But I would say as far as the shot blocking ability, I did like a little breakdown video that I posted in our forum over at Inside the Hall. Looked at a couple of his block shots from the EYBL. I thought actually that he does a pretty decent job actually of going straight up. He does kind of swat down on the ball occasionally from what I saw, but overall I thought his form and his technique are pretty good, and he does get off the ground pretty quickly. So, a lot of guys coming into college have to kind of work on fine tuning their footwork and figuring out how to block shots without fouling. And I don't think that's going to be any different here. But, I would say overall for what Indiana wants to do defensively, he's going to be a really good fit. He's not necessarily going to be, in my opinion, a guy that you're going to just post up in the paint. And I think we talked about this a little bit on Podcast on the Brink, Jared. I don't think he's going to be, someone that you're running isolations for in the post. He's going to be more of a guy who's getting kind of garbage opportunities with offensive rebounds, running the floor, and if you do those things well, you can easily average 6, 8, 10 points a game if if you're just kind of like a a guy who can capitalize on those opportunities. So, I would say the biggest thing with him is his versatility, being able to guard multiple positions, being able to recover well defensively, being able to switch screens, really fits in perfectly for what Indiana is going to want to do defensively.
He's also got great hair. Let's talk about that. I mean, he's got a fantastic, and you know what? Juwan Morgan's going to be gone eventually, so we need someone to sort of take over.
Also, Juwan Morgan cut his hair.
Oh,
Michael Dugan had an exclusive report live from campus about a week ago. I know it's going to be things are changing. You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Alex Bozich. We were breaking down the game of new IU commit Jake Forrester. There are two other things I really like about Jake, and it really doesn't have anything to do with his actual performance on the court. But I listened to a couple interviews with him. He did an interview on the Kent Sterling show. And sometimes you listen to a guy talk and just the way he sounds, the maturity, the way he carries himself verbally, you just like. And it reminded me of the first time that I heard Juwan Morgan talk. And I remember when I heard Juwan Morgan speak after he committed, I thought, wow, that's a high school senior. Like, he sounds mature beyond his years. I got that same feeling from Jake. And the other thing I like is that he has played, through his AAU career, I think even in high school, Alex, you can confirm this, but he's played with a lot of good players. Like, he's played with Mohamed Bamba and some other superstar level players. I think he's going to be playing with Cam Reddish this year. And so he's a guy who knows how to play with stars and do what he needs to do to be a supportive player, to play his role. And when you look at what Indiana wants to do, recruiting 5-star guys, Keon Brooks and Romeo Langford, and start really competing, for all these McDonald's All-American recruits, well, you've got to have role players and guys who understand and can be happy getting only a couple of shots a game and not having offense run through them. And that's the kind of guy that Jake seems like he is. So, he's not the top guy on your recruiting chart. He's not the 5-star guy, but he's a guy who can be a really valuable 3-4 year player because he knows his role and will do some of the dirty work. Alex, I know, you've had a chance to talk with his father and obviously spend a lot of time looking at him. Do you agree with that assessment, of how he'll fit in attitude and character wise?
Yeah. One of the things that stood out from my conversation with his dad was he realizes what Jake as a kid realizes kind of what he is as a player and the role he's going to have to play. Because I asked him specifically, what position do you see him playing? He said, 4 with the ability to guard the 5. A lot of times now with positionless basketball kind of being thrown around so much in recruiting, talked about as a buzzword, you get 6'9", 6'10" kids thinking they're Kevin Durant. Well, there's one Kevin Durant. If you're 6'9" or 6'10" and you're not a great outside shooter, you need to be playing down low, playing in the paint, doing the little things. And I think the thing that stood out to me also from talking to his dad was he's just the family. I think they realized that the opportunity to play at a program like Indiana was just something that they couldn't pass up. So I think he's going to, whatever role he's asked to play by the coaching staff, he's going to embrace. And, whether that be, a guy that's going to come in as a freshman and have to work his way into the rotation, or a guy who's going to come in and play a lot of minutes, I think he's going to embrace whatever role it is and be a team guy.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. He was very clear that, Indiana was his best offer. So it's clear that, what people may talk about is Indiana, an elite program and all this stuff. You hear Robert Finnessy talk about how the banners were one of the big reasons why he came, and Jake Forrester talk about how, Indiana was his best offer, and he kind of understood that and where Indiana is in the hierarchy. I think that's something that should be encouraging to all IU fans, just about, where the program is. And look, now you're sitting here, the class of 2018, with 4 4-star guys, or 3 4-stars and a 3-star, and things are looking really good now as you get ready to move forward and finish out the class. Alrighty. Coming up on this week's edition of the Assembly Call, we are going to take a bit of a broader view on the fall recruiting period, and then also discuss the pessimistic preseason expectations for the Hoosiers. That's coming up. Stick with us. All right. Well done, gentlemen. That was 11:15, so we got out at perfect time.
I'll be right back.
Okay, Alex, let's game plan this a little bit, because we hit a lot of this stuff in Podcast on the Brink, so I don't want to do I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let's pick a couple highlights. Like we should mention Romeo and Darius Garland, how they're both going to be at Hoosier Hysteria. Maybe give some quick thoughts on them, and then maybe just a couple overview pieces on what to watch for the fall recruiting period. Then I think we can hit the preseason expectations, because I think that'll be an interesting conversation.
Okay, you can let the people in the chat know that I'm not wearing eyeliner.
Yeah. And it's not only me that gets the fancy graphic. Will, actually, you all remember Will DeWitt, who is now running the show Bears Brothers, so we don't see him as much, but he made the fancy graphic, and Ryan got one too. He just forgot to add it. So hopefully he'll add it for the future. And Andy is at the Bengals game.
He's having a great time, I bet. It's 3-3 before the half.
Oh, lovely. Who could have predicted that the game between those two teams would not be that
it's
exciting?
as ugly as you could possibly imagine.
Who are they playing?
Texans.
Oh.
It's Deshaun Watson's first start
Mm.
as a Peru.
Okay, Ryan, do you have anything on fall recruiting period type stuff, or do you want us to hit that quickly to lead off this segment, and then we'll jump into the preseason expectations? I think that's the more.
Why don't you guys do that? I mean, that's Alex's specialty. He's on.
Okay, so we'll hit that. We'll hit that quickly.
Take your time on it. I mean, that's a good segment.
Well, we also talked a lot about it on Podcast on the Brink. So
yeah, but
we
this
don't
isn't
wanna...
Podcast on the Brink, Jared.
I know, but I don't want to cover all the same ground.
Okay. No,
because we do have some overlap. All right, let's do this.
So that was the radio show, right? It's off now. The radio show's done.
Friday, but remember on Saturday they do the whole thing. Saturday they do the full hour. It's Friday they do a half hour.
Got it.
Okay, so we have 24 minutes for these two segments. So we'll just see how long this one goes. All right, you guys ready? Let's do it. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Go to assemblycall.com/join to learn how to subscribe to our email newsletter, to our YouTube channel, and to our podcast. And if you want to get more out of being an IU basketball fan, then definitely make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter. You will get our weekly Six Banner Sunday news roundups, as well as our post-game analysis emails once the season begins. It is all free, and it will make you a smarter IU basketball fan. Again, the URL is assemblycall.com/join. I am Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips, my co-host on the Assembly Call IU postgame show, and Alex Bozich, who runs InsideTheHall.com, filling in for Andy Bottoms this week. Alex, you and I talked about this on Podcast on the Brink, but I want to hit some of the highlights, which is, the fall recruiting period just began. Archie and the staff have been active. They've already seen Keon Brooks. They've seen Trace Jackson-Davis, guys from the 2019 class. I think Ed Schilling or somebody was out to see Trendon Watford. And obviously there has been big news with Darius Garland and Romeo Langford, with both guys confirming that they're coming to Hoosier Hysteria, official visits set. So what to you have been the highlights so far from the fall recruiting period, in addition, obviously, to Jake Forrester's commitment? And what are some of the things that people should be watching out for here over the next couple of weeks?
Well, the highlight, obviously, we talked about this a little bit on Podcast on the Brink, that coaches were able to start going out to see kids on Saturday. Obviously, Indiana wasn't able to go out Saturday because they had Jake Forrester on campus for his official visit. So they really kind of picked up on Monday morning. Obviously, the thing that stood out to me Monday was making the stops at Keon Brooks' school first thing Monday morning, then hitting Trace Jackson-Davis, and then hitting Romeo Langford. To me, those are two of the top targets in 2019, and obviously one of the top remaining targets in 2018. So that kind of confirmed what everyone thought in terms of priorities. And then they've also made their ways to see, I believe, Demezy Anderson, Robert Fennessy, Jerome Hunter, kind of firming all those things up. You have to go keep recruiting guys even when they're committed. And you mentioned Trendon Watford. He's going to visit this weekend. I thought that was a positive thing from Indiana's perspective. I think his sister has a volleyball tournament up this way, so the whole family is going to be up here, and he's going to have a chance to come back to campus, something that he's done frequently, obviously, from Christian's time here on campus.
I remember always seeing him on the floor after games whenever I'd visit when Christian was there.
And then, the two official, obviously Romeo is going to be an unofficial. Garland scheduled the official visit for Hoosier Hysteria. To have them both that weekend in what should be, I think, the most exciting in terms of kind of hype Hoosier Hysteria since probably the season where Indiana went in ranked number 1 in terms of fan enthusiasm. I think they have a chance to get a really good crowd. It'll be a recruiting showcase. That event always is. So those are just kind of some of the things that stood out this week. I mean, obviously, coaches going out to see recruits isn't really surprising by any means. I mean, coaches from all the country, if you check Twitter from guys who are covering different schools, it's something that's happening everywhere. Coaches take advantage of the recruiting period where they can get back out on the road. But, it is interesting to see kind of where they go first and kind of confirming what you think in terms of Trace Jackson Davis and Keon Brooks are big priorities in 2019.
Man, it's so nice to have, so many of the open scholarships for next year filled by good players and filled by good players from inside the state. And now to be in the position of being able to be patient, and really, kind of swing for the fences with guys like Darius Garland and Romeo Langford, and not to be scrambling, because frankly, over the past decade or so, Indiana has scrambled and, had to kind of gamble on some guys late, and occasionally that worked out. But a lot of times, as we know, it didn't. And it's a little bit of a different feeling, and it's a nice feeling. And I mean, do you get the sense, Alex, that, because we've heard about, Archie and his staff, they just have more of a plan. They seem really organized. Like, does it feel that way? I mean, the fact that they've been able to do this and hit the ground running like they have, is it just kind of a different way that they're doing it with a different level of organization around the whole process?
I mean, I don't know the inner workings of everything. I just know that so far the evidence that we have is that they're pretty much perfect in terms of not swinging and missing. If you get to this point in the fall and you don't have any commitments, you're scrambling. We talked a little bit about this, I think, too, on Podcast on the Brink, where, if this is kind of this is kind of where you want to be heading into the fall, because you've kind of got the guys that you want, and you've kind of got the other big fish out there. I mean, not a lot of 5-star guys are committed at this point, so it's not really, even if they're going to end up with Romeo or Darius Garland, it's not surprising that they haven't committed yet. But the other guys that they really targeted over the summer, to go ahead and get them locked up, now you're not having to go 2 or 3 deep down your list. You've got the guys that you prioritized, and just kind of going back to them firming up 2017 guys, and then getting, I think, 5 recruits now. If you look at the commitments plus Race Thompson, I mean, that there's the body of work so far is pretty much pristine from a recruiting standpoint. So I don't know if it's organization. I don't know if it's the kind of the hope of a new era of IU basketball, the way they build relationships, a combination of all these things. But to this point, I'd say if you want to give a grade, it's got to be a pretty darn close to an A+.
You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Alex Bozich of Inside the Hall. And you're right. I mean, so far, Alex, everything has been pristine. But of course, games haven't been played yet. And what's going to be really important, I think, for Archie Miller and for this rebirth now of Indiana basketball and taking the program to the next level is, can the really positive momentum from this offseason carry into the season? And how does this team, filled with guys that Archie didn't obviously recruit, how do they adapt to his system? How does that transition go? And, look, Alex, you've done a series on Inside the Hall going through some of the preseason magazines and looking at some of the preseason rankings. And there's really hasn't been anybody yet who's very bullish on Indiana, at least from my standpoint. You have Athlon, who ranked Indiana preseason 9th in the Big Ten. Lindy's had Indiana 12th, and Street and Smith's had Indiana 10th. And so I want to spend a few minutes talking about these expectations, because we've talked about it before on this show, and I think we all feel like Indiana has a chance to do pretty well. I mean, we all feel like expecting the NCAA tournament is not unfair, given the talent that's there and what we think is possible. But it's kind of interesting now, in light of some of these, quote unquote, expert predictions coming out. I wasn't expecting people to be quite so pessimistic about this year's team. So, Ryan, as you kind of start projecting into the season, have your expectations changed at all? What do you think of some of these pessimistic preseason expectations that you're seeing?
No, I mean, I think people are judging this team based on last year's team. And you have to remember, before last year, people were talking about Indiana as a national title threat. Sort of an outside chance in the top, 3 finish in the Big Ten at least. And things went bad. And when you realize that a lot of those players are back and are going, it's the same guys who were hyped up last year, who had a rough season, and everybody up and down the lineup had a rough season.
It's not even the guys who were hyped up. Those guys all left.
Yeah. But you've got the core of that team back. And a guy like, we talked about it before, but a guy like Juwan Morgan is somebody who last year, a lot of people expected a huge breakout from. And then, of course, he, battled injuries and all that stuff and had a down year. But he's still that same guy who could be poised for a breakout. Robert Johnson's a senior guard who's going to have a big impact on this team. You've got, young guys like Curtis Jones and Devontae Green, who are a year more mature and a year better. I think this team's, I don't understand how people are saying that this team won't be in the, and of course, Deron Davis. How could I forget that? Alex just reminded me in the chat. Since I've been hyping him up for so long, I can't believe I forgot him. But guys like that, and I don't know how people could say that this is project them so poorly. A lot of it's gonna depend on how they adjust Archie's system, how they fit in Archie's system, and how everything moves forward. But I see this as a tournament team for sure.
What do you think, Alex?
Well, I had him 8th in my initial power rankings. And I think we talked to John Gasaway, and he was a little bit even higher than 8th on them. And so I was surprised to see some of these projections, but then again, not so surprised when you consider that, these magazines are attempting to cover every conference, and the people that are writing these projections are not necessarily familiar with Indiana's roster, nor are they familiar with the roster of every team in the Big Ten. To me, I'd say if I was looking at the floor for this team, I would say 10th probably in the Big Ten is probably as low as I could see them finishing. I don't see them finishing below Rutgers, Nebraska, Ohio State, and Illinois. I just don't think those teams are going to be very good at all. But then in the Big Ten, to me, we're 2 through 10 is pretty much up for grabs. I think Michigan State's obviously the clear-cut favorite, but beyond that, Northwestern, everyone's talking about how they're going to be a top 25 team. I think last year, that collapse that they had in Assembly Hall to an Indiana team that couldn't beat anybody in February.
An Indiana team is collapsing itself.
Exactly. That doesn't scream potential power in the league coming into the season. Do I think Northwestern is going to be good and be a tournament team? Yes, but I don't think by any means that I would put them in a different class than a lot of the teams they're going to be occupying the middle of the Big Ten. There's so many teams that have question marks. You look at Maryland, how do they replace Melo Trimble? Michigan, how do they replace Derek Walton Jr.? Just go down the list. Iowa,
Purdue.
Peter Chalk, Purdue. I think Purdue is going to be better than people are giving them credit for. I know people aren't going to like me saying that, but they've got 4 seniors. They've got some guys who I think are going to be pretty good players. I think it's kind of foolish that people are assuming that Northwestern and Minnesota are going to be better than Purdue. Purdue just won the league, so
yeah. And Purdue's going to be good defensively. I think we can all say that, at least, at the very least.
Right, absolutely. So, I don't think they're going to finish 12th. Do I think there's a chance they could finish 10th? Yes. Do I think there's a chance they could finish as high as 5th or 6th? Absolutely. So I think it's just going to be one of those years in the Big Ten. Whoever kind of seizes that opportunity there in the middle of the pack, I think there's going to be opportunity for teams to finish higher than we're thinking going into the year.
And look, it makes some sense. Indiana was terrible last year. So disappointing the final 2 months of the season. You lose all the talent off of that team. Bryant's gone, Ananobi's gone, Blackman's gone. And so people look at that and there's not a whole lot of proven production there. And so I get it. But I think what fans who follow the program closely see is that the 2 biggest issues for Indiana last year were defense and turnovers. And I think when you look at Archie Miller's track record, it's fair to expect both of those things to improve this year. Now, how much with a lot of the same guys, I don't know, but it's certainly fair to expect them to improve. And we know how many games Indiana might have won last year with just normal turnover issues and with adequate defense. And then I think the thing that people forget is that there's a lot of talent on this roster. I mean, Robert Johnson was a 4-star recruit. Curtis Jones was a 4-star recruit. Deron Davis at one time was a 5-star recruit, but was a 4-star recruit. Juwan Morgan was a 4-star recruit. Like, there are still guys who are talented and who have ability if there is a better structure in place, if, talk about positionless basketball. Last year it was just role-less basketball, and so if there's a better plan in place, I think a lot of us see, a guy like Josh Newkirk being able to thrive under Archie Miller much more than he was able to under Tom Crean. Guys like Devontae Green and Curtis Jones hopefully able to kind of find their sea legs after freshman year when they struggled. So I get why some of the preseason publications are down on Indiana, but I also understand why people who really follow the program closely, like us, are a little bit more optimistic. And, so again, I think it's fair to expect this team to be in the NCAA tournament. I think the talent's there. I trust the coaching enough. That doesn't mean that, all the positive momentum just goes out the window if the team struggles in year one. But I do think it will be important, obviously, as guys like Darius Garland and Romeo Langford look to make their decisions, after seeing a full season, as the class of 2019 tries to figure out where they're going to go to school. Having a good season, I think, will be important for keeping that momentum. And so certainly we all hope that the Hoosiers are able to outperform those expectations. And I think for a lot of us, the expectation is that they will. Any final comments, guys, on the preseason expectations before we hop in and answer some questions that people submitted? Are we good?
Preseason expectations are just that. They're expectations, and they're meant to be either broken or fulfilled. And so you can go either way on them. And quite frankly, I think it's good for Archie Miller that and his staff that they're coming in under the radar a little bit this year, and people are confident in him. It seems like that he'll get it together, but that they're not expecting much from this year. I think that's actually good for the team. Give them something to fight for.
Better than advertised part 2?
We'll see.
Alrighty, coming up on the assembly call, we've got a bunch of good questions. I don't even know if we will be able to get to all of them, but we are going to answer those next on the assembly call. Stick with us. All right, that was 15:03. Nicely done. So we've got 24 minutes for this segment, or for these 2 segments.
How much?
24 minutes total. So we've got 8.
No, that was the 3rd segment, Jared.
Yeah, I know. 24 minutes total is what I'm saying. That one's 15.
Oh, okay. I was like,
8:57.
We do not have 24 minutes left.
No, we do not. Okay, so we got to be out of here at 8:21. Okay, so we'll hit some of these early questions. Did you guys have a chance to look at Tyler's question about your mother's bear pizza? If you could create your own pizza, I started thinking about it and I couldn't come up with anything great, but I have.
You just announced mine.
What?
Better than advertised pizza.
Oh. But what's going to be on it is the question. We'll see if we get to that. It's a fun question. All right, and if you guys have any questions in the chat, put them in there, and we will try to get to those too. Okay, so take a look at these questions. See if are there any that you guys particularly want.
Where are they?
They're on the radio run sheet that I sent over, that Google Doc.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
You just got to scan down.
They're all pretty.
Each segment's broken up on it.
We'll go with Adam's question first because it piggybacks off of. So the first question we'll go with is Adam's. He said, who will play the biggest all-around role on this year's team?
That's easy.
Is it? I mean, all-around role?
One of 2 guys, I think.
Could be one of 3 guys.
Well, I'm saying 1 of 2. I'll fight you for it.
And then Trey's question is good about Forrester or Clifton Moore. Who do you think has more long-term potential? And then we'll get into the other ones. So we can take a little bit of time on the first 2 because they're the best ones, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we addressed any concern we're getting too many forwards. I think we addressed that because I said you need length and size, and then so I think
we can hit that quickly to reiterate it.
Okay. You might just want to hit that without sending it to us.
I probably will. Okay. Yeah.
And how many scholarships? I mean,
well, we can't get into that because we don't know. So I'll quickly just say, I mean, who knows how many scholarships? It could be 1, it could be 6. Like a lot can happen between now and then. But we can at least talk about Alex. Maybe who are the most likely guys from 2019? Hit Keon and Trace Jackson Davis, and then whoever else you want to talk about real quick. We'll see how much we have time for. Ready?
Let's do it.
Here we go. 8:21 for this one. I'll keep you updated in the chat with where we are on time.
Okay.
Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Alex Bozich, wrapping up another week of talking about IU basketball. And this is the time in the show when we answer your questions. So we got a bunch of good questions submitted. Let's get right to them. Let's start with Adam's question because it kind of dovetails off of what we were talking about in the last segment. Adam asks, who should or will play the biggest all-around role on this year's team? When I first saw this question, I thought it was, kind of too general to answer. But when you really zero in on that term all-around role, to me, I think there's a few guys that you could look at. Robert Johnson jumps out, Deron Davis jumps out, Juwan Morgan jumps out. To me, I think the guy who plays the biggest all-around role in this year's team is Robert Johnson because of what he means offensively, what we know that he can bring defensively, and the leadership of being a senior and the guy who has played the most minutes in big situations, in tough environments. I really think in a lot of ways the team is going to go how Robert goes this year. And so when you take all around, take a holistic view, I think it's Robert Johnson. Ryan, I know you said when we were talking about this in the break that there were two guys that jumped out to you. Who are the two guys for you?
I think it's Juwan Morgan and Colin Hartman. I think those are the two guys because of, you kind of know what you're going to get with other guys, but I think that those two guys will step up, but I think they also have to step up for this team to be good and to compete. And I think that from a leadership standpoint and from what they can do on the court, I think that if you're looking on the court, off the court, those are the two guys who I think will play the biggest all-around overall role. Obviously, Robert Johnson is expected to be a leader and all that stuff, but I think those two guys are almost like X factors and I think will wind up being a huge deal to this team.
What do you think, Alex?
I would say Robert Johnson first, and then if I was going to pick somebody else, I would go with Deron Davis second, because I think as much as I think Ryan hits on some good points there with Hartman and Juwan Morgan, I think if Indiana really wants to reach its potential, then Deron Davis has to have a year where he stays on the floor, doesn't foul, and really is a mid low to middle teens score for Indiana, because that's one of the biggest questions I have about this team going into the season is where's the offense going to come from? And I know what we're going to get out of what they're going to get out of Robert Johnson, but Deron Davis to me is going to be a guy who really makes a step forward. So, and also as a high school kid, he was a really good shot blocker. We'll see what kind of changes to what kind of improvements to his physique, what they do for him defensively. So I would go Robert Johnson 1, Deron Davis 2.
Okay. Our next question is from Trey, who wants to know, who do you think has more long-term potential, Jake Forrester or Clifton Moore? Alex, who do you think?
I'll go with Clifton Moore. I think he's more versatile in terms of his ball skills. At this point, has a really good outside stroke, and he's actually a guy, even with his size, that you probably don't mind if he steps out and takes a 3-point shot. Seems to be pretty skilled with the ball in terms of handling the ball as well, and can block some shots. So, and I'm never going to bet against the Draft Express guys who follow this stuff for a living, kind of singling him out from the Jordan Brand regional game as a guy who has a ton of NBA potential. So I'll go with Clifton Moore.
Do you think it's fair to say that Jake Forrester is maybe a safer prospect, like has kind of a higher floor, and Clifton Moore maybe is a bit more of a risk reward type prospect? Or do you think, are you pretty confident that he will be productive at Indiana, or is there a chance that the level is too big from a physical standpoint or from a speed standpoint for him?
I don't know. I haven't seen him in person enough. Or, I haven't seen him in person at all. I've watched a lot of film on him, but I just think that some of the performances he had last summer, the fact that he didn't play on the big shoe circuits, what a lot of coaches from around the country were saying about him last summer, that a lot of mid-major coaches were hoping that no high majors saw him because they kind of knew what kind of talent he was. I think he's going to be able to contribute. Is it going to be right away in terms of being able to compete physically, maybe not, but I think overall he's got a chance to be really good, whether that be this year or down the line.
Yeah, I think the answer is Clifton Moore. I think he has a much higher upside than Forrester, and I think that he has a decent chance of getting there. I would agree with you, Jared, that I think that Forrester might be a safer prospect as far as what you're going to get with him. With Moore, there is such an X factor with his size and gaining weight. But as far as basketball skills and his upside, it's really high. And so I was surprised, as you mentioned, Alex, I was surprised that other people didn't get super involved in his recruitment and that he wound up at Indiana, as opposed to, other teams. I mean, not that he wound up at Indiana, but that it seemed like Indiana just came in and grabbed him. And it didn't seem like a huge battle with some other big name schools.
All right. Josh asks, well, we have been very happy with Archie's recruiting so far. Any concern that we are getting so many forwards? No. When you start projecting forward and you look at the size, and not just size, but the athleticism and versatility and the different kind of roles that these, quote unquote forwards can play, I think, look, it's not really a guard forward center type game anymore. It's more roles. And I think Indiana's got a lot of versatile guys. A lot of big guys are going to be able to do a lot of things both defensively and offensively. So no concern there, assuming someone like Robert Finney can step up and get everybody organized on offense. But no concern there, Josh. Nick asks, how many scholarships will we use in 2019? That's the first part of his question. I'll answer that real quickly. We have no idea. A lot of time between now and 2019. Could be one scholarship, could be 4 or 5, depending on what happens between now and then. So it's really tough to project. But the second part of his question is, who do you think Archie will have the best chance in getting to commit to that class? So, Alex, the most obvious names are Keon Brooks and Trace Jackson Davis, because they are obviously guys in Indiana that it seems like the staff has really prioritized and built a good relationship with. Trendon Watford obviously is an IU legacy. Seems like the staff has a good relationship with him. And then you've got top 10 guys like James Weissman and Matt Hurt that, Indiana's involved with. So who do you think Archie and Indiana is going to have the best chance of getting in the 2019 class?
Right now, I'd say Keon Brooks and Trace Jackson Davis. Indiana's in really good shape with both of those guys. I mean, Keon Brooks Sr., when I talked to him, he was really, really high on Indiana. And same thing goes for Trace Jackson Davis's stepfather. So I know we don't have a lot of time left here, but so I would say those two guys would be at the top of the list.
Okay. And here's a question from Nick. What do you think the effect of Crean's departure will be on the defense's total deflections, Ryan?
Probably high, but no one will chart them.
That, to be fair, that is something. Don't a lot of schools chart deflections?
They do now, yeah.
Yeah, with a different definition.
Oh,
Of what a deflection really is. I think the way
has anyone ever settled on what a deflection actually is?
No. I
That's up to you,
never got a
isn't it?
clear definition of it either under the previous regime, so we'll leave it at that.
Huh. Makes sense. Makes sense to me. All righty. Well, we are running out of time here. So that will do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. Beautiful. Right at 8:56.
Thanks, Alex.
You got to go,
No
Ryan?
problem.
I got to run. Yeah, working.
Awesome. Hey, great to see everybody for the live broadcast today. This is the highest
thanks,
number
guys.
of live viewers we've had in a while. Good active live chat. Let me know, those of you who watched on the website, how the experience is. The main goal of the redesign of the website was to make it easier for you to get the live broadcast and then be able to watch the replay as easy as possible. So let me know how that experience is, because if we can make it better, we will. So awesome to see so many folks here, and awesome to have you with us, Alex.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me. It was a lot of fun.
We need to do this more
Sorry.
often.
Sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I'm battling a cold here, so
Oh,
Feel
you're
better.
great, man.
I'll be better next time.
All
You were
right.
great,
Later,
man.
guys.
All right. We will see you all next week. Same time, same place.